So today I'm going to be covering a trigger I created for the lead object for Salesforce Maps. So the use case here was that we had a bunch of different zones that are stored as layers on Salesforce Maps, and we had people within each layer inputting their addresses into their lead forms, and we wanted to be able to determine which layer an address resided in. So I wrote this trigger to be able to automatically populate that field based on just the address and determine which layer it's contained in. So you can see on my map here I have a few layers selected. These are just some different areas in Northern Virginia. And if I come over to my lead here, you can see I currently have a Falls Church address selected, and my in-layer field is set to Falls Church, which is the name of the Falls Church layer. If I go ahead and update this to a Herndon address, for example, and go ahead and save that, you have to give it a refresh as well since this is running asynchronously. So once I refresh that, you can see my in-layer field has updated to the Herndon boundary. Basically the way this works behind the scenes, there's a few different things I use from the Maps API. First off, my trigger is triggered on insert or update of a lead. So if you're changing your address or if you're a new lead, we want to be able to determine which layer you're in. So those are the criteria for how this thing starts. The only thing that's happening in the trigger code, you can see this is pretty compact. All it's doing is passing in the address from the lead and the lead ID. And the Maps API takes the address in a specific format, so I just did that here, and I passed that in along with the lead to my second class, which runs asynchronously. You have to do this asynchronously because making any external callouts from a trigger have to be done asynchronously. Since triggers are meant to run fast, they're not allowed to do things like external callouts directly in the trigger. So you have to make a separate future class that can run, sometime in the future once the trigger is complete. So that's what this does here. It takes in the address, runs this geocode method, which converts it to lat long, and then you take that lat long and you run those coordinates against the selected map layers using this PointInPolygon method. To select the map layers, I actually created a custom setting here called SF Maps Layer Folder, and this is, I just created one instance of the custom setting that is mapped over to my folder of map layers right here. So I have this JG test folder which I used for all these layers here, and I basically just created an instance of that custom setting with the value of JG test folder, and then from here you can just query that custom setting and get the folder that you're trying to filter on. And so you can update whichever folder that you want to select the layers from by just changing the setting rather than editing the code. So once you have the folder of layers you want to query through, you run the PointInPolygon. It determines which layer the address is contained in. If it's contained in one of the layers, it will set the in-layer field on the lead to the name of the layer, and if it's not contained in one of the layers, then it'll just return not in layer. So that's essentially how the code works in the background. It's pretty straightforward on how it works. I use this documentation from the Salesforce Maps developer guide to do some of the help me with some of the PointInPolygon and the geocoding stuff. It's pretty well documented in here, so I'll leave a link to this as well somewhere. Here's the geocode one. But that's essentially how it works. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on Slack @Jackaletta, and thank you.